Hi folks, it's Coach Kelvin here from the We Run Virtual Run Club and We Run Coach for Leeds and surrounding areas as well as online coaching. In this little video, I'm going to discuss device accuracy. And what I mean by that is when your Garmin watch or similar tells you a fitness age or whether you're productive or whether you've got a certain lactate threshold or whether you've got a certain VO2 max, how accurate is that data? And the reason I'm doing this video at the moment, I'm going to do a short video series on training intensities starting with VO2 Max. So initially we want to make sure that the data that we're actually getting given from our watches is as accurate as possible. I'm a Garmin user, so I'm going to predominantly talk about Garmin, but I use Training Peaks to track my fitness more than I do Garmin because I find it quite a lot more accurate. So the first thing we need to make sure is that the data that we've inputted into the device is correct. And you know, obviously the most simple ones are things like gender, age and weight. So all of those need to be correct, and believe it or not, it's not uncommon for someone's metrics to be out. We wonder why, and they've popped the gender wrong, or maybe it's a weight that they were when they first bought their device, and that has actually changed. So let's make sure that gender, age and weight are correct. Then what the devices do when they try to work out fitness, so whether we're sort of peaking or recovering or unproductive and things like that, they generally use a percentage of lactate threshold, so LT2 for those that are familiar with the thresholds. So this is an effort of about 40 to 80 minutes. So 40 minutes for less well-trained runners and 80 minutes is probably edging towards elite runners. So what this means, it means if you don't race, it doesn't have to be a fairly regular basis, but at least a couple of times a year where you do an all-out 40-minute to maybe 1 hour effort, your device won't really know your lactate threshold, so it'll be very difficult for it to work out anything. So let's say, for instance, a runner runs purely for pleasure. They just love going out, do a couple of 5Ks a week, never race, everything's super easy. What their watch is telling them in terms of fitness will be a million miles out because it doesn't have the data of higher intensity work, which its algorithms work on. The next thing, you'll always hear the coaches saying this thing, your devices only work when you're training if you use either a chest strap to measure heart rate or an optical armband. So if you're not using those whilst training, your data will be wildly out anyway. So unless you're using those, I wouldn't use the data that you're seeing from your watch in terms of VO2 max, lactate threshold, whether you're increasing fitness, decreasing fitness, etc. The thing that's worth mentioning there, the opticals on the watch actually work quite well for resting heart rate. So some of the things like day-to-day heart rate and resting heart rate, particularly resting heart rate if you wear your watch whilst you sleep, is actually quite accurate. And one of the reasons that watches are quite inaccurate on the optical is modern sports watches are quite big, and any light gets underneath there and it skews the reading. So when we're asleep, obviously it's dark, so we get a more accurate reading. The other thing is the algorithms are skewed towards 10K to half marathon in terms of what someone's training for. So if you're training for a 10K or a half marathon and you're structuring your training really well with the right amounts of VO2 max, threshold work, tempo and race pace efforts, and you're using a chest strap or an optical armband, the rest of your data is inputted correctly, the algorithms are actually really accurate. If you're training for an ultramarathon and the sort of percentage of your easier running is much larger, or you're training for, let's say, a 5K, so you're doing a lot of VO2 Max type work. So either end of that, sort of outside that 10K to half marathon spectrum, the readings will be fairly accurate, but not quite as accurate. So the data that we get out is only as accurate as the data that we put in and the data that we collect. So do bear those things in mind. Another thing that often gets mentioned is fitness age from Garmin. And I thought I'd just touch on this quickly because it's quite interesting. And it works on vigorous minutes, so doing some intensity in the week. It works on resting heart rate. And it also works on body mass index, BMI. I have a little bit of a problem with some of these things, and I'll tell you why. So I'm 51, and Garmin thinks I'm 51 and a half, which is fine. That's fairly accurate then, isn't it? But the way it tells me that I can improve my fitness age is to reduce my resting heart rate. The reason my resting heart rate is so high on Garmin is I don't wear my watch day to day. I only wear it when I train. So it thinks my resting heart rate is about 120, 125 or something like that. And the other way that it thinks, it thinks what I need to do to make my fitness age better, so decrease my fitness age, is to lose weight. And I don't need to lose weight. I'm happy with my BMI. And we do know that for active people, BMI is a really bad metric to use. So, that's why Garmin thinks, I'm 51. It thinks my fitness age is 51 and a half. You might think that's quite close. In terms of general population of 51-year-olds, I'm probably fairly fit. But what I'm not going to do is wear my watch all the time. I really don't want to do that. And I'm certainly not going to lose any weight. So Garmin's fitness age is actually quite far out, unfortunately. And the main thing there is not everybody wears the watch all the time. And BMI is a really poor metric for active individuals. So before we think about, all my watch says I'm unproductive, I'm unhappy about that, we really need to think about the data that we've put in and is it correct? So is the data that we're putting in correct? Do we do at least a couple of races a year that are 40 minute to 1 hour all out effort? Do we use a chest strap or an optical armband? If we're using all these, the data is likely to be fairly accurate. Take the fitness age with a pinch of salt. If this data is inputted incorrectly, or you don't race very often, or you don't use a chest strap or an optical armband, I would ignore it all. And maybe just use things like race times or time trials as a way of measuring fitness. So I hope that makes some sort of sense. There's quite a lot in there. You might have to watch that one a couple of times. And, I really encourage questions on this one because it's something that I find myself talking about quite a lot. So thanks for watching and happy running.